Mitra, let's talk about learning and specifically as it relates to following some sort of spiritual path. There's so many paths we can take. There's the path, the Course in Miracles, or there's Sufism, or there is the yogic path, and there's many others as well. How does one go about that learning process so that they can get the most out of it?
Well, I can only talk about my experience that I've been in that world for, I don't know, almost half a century, perhaps. The seeking of the truth, I call it. For what has worked for me is neutrality, staying in the balanced state and then taking in what's there. And because what I see, what I observe either when I'm teaching or when I'm part of the student crowd and learning, that there is two main kind of reactions or responses. One is that there is like a lot of awe and attachment. It's like, wow, this is the one. This is the only one. And which is wonderful, by the way, because it opens a door for us. But when we stay in that state, it doesn't allow us to move forward with our learning. We become attached. Now we have found a path that is the path, and everybody needs to come on that path. And then it becomes very non-spiritual. I'm now protecting it. Now I'm defending it. Now I'm promoting it. Or I see the other aspect of it, that there is reactions, like there is aversion to it. I don't like it. I can't believe it. This sounds like that. Might as well call it this. And none of these allow me at least, to learn. And what has worked for me, and and I'm letting other people know, I truly am curious. You won't believe where you will find me as a student. And people who know me sometimes get really shocked when they see I participate as a student, because I love to see how people express their learning and how they grow. But I arrive and hopefully do my best to stay in neutrality. Let me take it in. Let me check it and see how my body is, taking it in and receiving it. And that way I hold everything they tell me. And then when it's time and when it's true for me, I use it. I'm not against any of them. I'm not a member of anything. That's one of the reasons that I'm not a member of anywhere. But I'm also the recipient of the wisdom of anything and everything that I have participated in.
Yeah. There's two sides that I've experienced personally. There's been the learning about something new and becoming attached to an outcome. And when you're attached to an outcome, for example, oh, I'm pursuing this so that it can fix me, right? It's very hard to continue in neutrality with that. The other side has been dabbling, right? I don't think
Ah,
you mentioned the dabbling.
no.
Dabbling is a common thing too,
Yeah.
which is, I'm interested in learning in this, but let me just dabble. And the thing about dabbling in my experience has been that I'm really just barely scratching the surface of whatever that thing is, because each one of these things usually is an immense body of wisdom, and one isn't really better or worse than the other. They all ultimately lead to the same place. With dabbling, you just can't really determine if it's something for you or not, or if you're actually receiving the wisdom of what it has.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm listening to, what I'm hearing, and what I'm remembering from my own journey, or a journey of those that I've been a witness to in different capacities, is that when we get attached, then we can't see fully. When we have aversion, then we can't see fully. That's interesting. It's the same result for both sides. But you brought up the third group, which is very, very important. Those who dabble. The problem with that is, the way I see it, is that they learn the language, but not the wisdom of it. And we have a huge number of people in current times that have the language. And the problem with having the language is that it implies to them at least, and to others, that they have got the wisdom. So and that's where the I know comes from. That when you start talking, is it like I know? We've talked about this before, but it's the problem is when I think I know, I'll stop learning. That's why I chose neutrality, but I was not thinking about this group, which is a very important part that many people fall under, that they've gone enough to learn the language. The lingo is very specific. Everybody's love and light, and all these things I hold you with compassion, and they're all, after every email there's a beautiful statement, but that is not enough. That's a great beginning. That's wonderful to know the language, to understand the concepts, but it's not enough. You need to actually apply them. That's why I go neutral. So, and I go all the way. We talked about this before, you and I, privately. I go all the way because it's the respect you give to a training or a teaching or a wisdom that needs to be there as a whole. I can't just give you three things and then you go and say it didn't work. I go all the way. I go to the end if it feels right. And most of the time it feels right. I go all the way and then I leave it. And it's interesting how that learning shows up 12 years later, 12 days later, when I need it. So that's what allows me to actually apply my learning, because I'm not attached to it. I don't have aversion to it, and I have gone deep enough to understand it. And then it doesn't matter what it's called, because when we get attached, then it becomes another ism that we're part of, that I want to say mine is better than you. And we have those isms. We don't need more of those. What we don't have is openness and the exchange of wisdom between all these knowings and schools of thoughts, because then that way we all will benefit from it. So yeah, I go all the way. I go actually deeper than those who are attached to it, because sometimes we have discussions and I say, what about this? They say, where did you see that? When did they say that? I said, well, it was in this learning, in this teaching. So I realized that maybe because I don't have the attachment, I'm not looking for like, wow, this is the best thing since the creation of human beings. I actually have more openness to it. I'm receiving it. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And as you're sharing this, I'm thinking about what all the way means, right?
Mm,
And it's interesting. There's two, in my personal experience, two ways of going all the way.
mhm,
One is the way of the mind only.
mhm,
So the all the way that's like, it's a lot of efforting and it's a lot of like, okay, let me memorize as much as I can. Let me understand intellectually all of these concepts. And there's a lot of effort being put into it. But in my experience, not fully absorbing the material. And that actually, I think that's comes from the energy of more of an attachment to an outcome,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
But then there's an all the way that I've experienced that is softer. It involves contemplation and not just reading something and understanding it intellectually, right? I might read a passage, I contemplate it. So now I'm like, what does this really mean to me? How does it apply to my life? Or
mhm,
just holding it softly in contemplation as I take my dog for a walk, right?
mhm,
And that form of all the way is really understanding the essence of
mhm,
the wisdom behind the words. And it's a very different experience. And what I've learned is oftentimes these bodies of knowledge, just one small paragraph can contain such an immense amount of wisdom that it takes days for me to fully
mhm.
grasp it and absorb the depth of its meaning.
Interesting.
So that's my experience with all the way. I'm curious to hear about yours.
My all the way is all the way open, open mind, open heart. I really stay curious, which curiosity is openness of the mind, and really open with my heart. I want to understand it. It's almost like this when I was younger, and you are young, when you go on a date first date or second date, you really want to know, how do I feel when I'm sitting next to this person? How do they do this? Like every detail about them is fascinating. And so for me, the learning is like that. Everything is interesting. And as at that time, I can't say no, but very little judgment, because I haven't found myself in absolute no judgmental sort of state when I'm like in everyday life. I find it when I'm in deep state of meditation or contemplation or silence, but it's hard to find that space for me in an everyday sort of experience. But I go to very little judgment. It's like, okay, let me hear this, let me hear this, let me understand it first. And that curiosity allows me to go deeper. And when I ask more questions, either actual questions or pondering or contemplation, as you called it, which is beautiful way of saying it, I actually get closer to relating to it. So in the beginning, if I had not asked any questions or contemplated on it, I would have had a lot of objections. And when it gets unfolded for me, either by me or by the teacher, I actually relate to most things that I receive. It's really fascinating that it's mainly my state rather than what's being said that makes it possible for me to relate to. And yeah, for me, it's openness of the mind, openness of the heart, which basically is what you're saying in a different way.
Yeah.
That I stay curious, I stay wanting to know, because the moment I start judging, I'm saying I know,
Yeah.
and I don't need any more information. And by the way, I don't like what you're saying, or I
Yeah.
do like what you're saying. So I stay in curiosity and questioning. I wonder how that is. That sounds interesting. What does that even mean? Can you tell me more? And that allows me to honor the teachings. I think that's the best way to honor the teaching. And everything I have learned, a lot of isms, a lot of things that didn't have a name, um, I was just curious. I was just curious. I traveled with a teacher, which was basically the best way to learn. And as we were going through everyday experiences, I watched my teacher, who was a very high Vivekananda Buddhist teacher, which is the highest level of being a teacher in Buddhism. And I just had questions. I wonder, why did you say no to that person? How
Mm.
come you accepted that invitation? What made you believe that? And why made you believe this? And through that, I learned a lot. I could have stopped and just judged, oh, I think my teacher thinks he's this, but he's doing that. That was one way. Or say, oh, whatever he does must be the best way, which is the attachment way. But I stayed neutral to the degree that people who were with me on that trip, they thought that I was not maybe fully respecting the teacher. And
Mm.
they said, but you question him all the time. I said, yes, because I really am interested in his teachings. He said, but you know his teaching. I said, no, I don't. I want to know more. It was very interesting in their interpretation, in their attachment. My curiosity was a sign of not believing in my teacher.
Mm.
Whereas for me, it was deep learning. In fact, things that I've learned from my teacher, it has been part of my living and teaching since then. But I've never converted to Buddhism.
Mm.
I've never considered even that, or converted to the teacher who was a Sikh or a Jewish rabbi, or I've never ever considered converting, but I've always considered learning their wisdom.
Mm. Yeah. I think a bit of skepticism is healthy. Is always healthy, and not taking things at face value is what I hear you saying. It's like I'm not going to just read it and take it as face value. I want to totally understand it and absorb it, and really kind of take this apart to make sure that I understand it, its total essence. Yeah. So tell me about Rumi, because that's had a big influence on your life. I know
Yes.
Rumi has had a very profound influence on your life. And I'm curious to hear, when you first started studying Rumi, versus now when you teach it, what would you go back to the version of yourself that started studying? What would you tell that Mitra like to do differently, if at all?
Exactly. I actually, because I was very young, I actually understood Rumi with no curtains.
Mm.
And it went, oh, I got shivers as I said that. I actually got Rumi because Rumi, we read Rumi in the original language, which is Persian. So it went home much better. And
Mm.
now I have all these layers of explanation and making it fancy and explaining it. I would say to this Mitra, go back to the younger Mitra. I wouldn't say it the other way around, because
Interesting.
that Mitra had no other reason except to enjoy it and to get it. I just loved it. I know as a child, when I first heard, and we were introduced quite, earlier on to Rumi's poetry, I read it and I thought, wow, I didn't know why. This sounds so good. I probably didn't even understand the meaning of the words, but I got the meaning behind the words
Mm.
because I was so open and so eager to know what that means. And I wasn't fascinated by anything else. So I would let the younger Mitra to advise the older Mitra.
Mm. And Rumi's poetry, now it's beyond poetry. It's a spiritual path. It's the path of Sufism. How would you describe the Sufi path, particularly through Rumi's poetry?
Yes, I would distinguish between Rumiism, if such a thing exists, and Sufism, for many reasons. But as far as Rumi is concerned, what Rumi told me, and I can only say that, and that's the beauty of Rumi. When we are in the class, we read it, and we go around the class and say, "What did it say to you?" There
Mm.
is no right way, because
Hmm.
what we get, and it's really philosophy and spirituality in the beautiful form of poetry, which is the ultimate way. The form and substance are beautiful. But what it told me, I remember vividly as a child, that it got me really interested in the world of invisible.
Hmm.
So I realized very earlier on that there are two worlds that I'm living in. One is the visible, physical one, and the other one is the invisible and non-physical. And that world is far more influential than my physical world. And if I let my invisible, my energy to inform my physical, I am better off. That was my basic conclusion as a child. So every time there was a pain, and pain was quite present in my childhood, I went to the invisible to find something that I could bring to the visible world. And I think that was the friendship, then more than anything else, that I formed with Rumi. That Rumi taught me, showed me the way. And I probably didn't understand. I remember this because I remember asking a teacher that was my neighbor. And you probably hear a lot about this particular teacher. His name was Mr. Pur Jahani,
Hmm.
which translation of it means the son of the universe. And believe me, he was the son of universe. And he was our next door neighbor. And I asked him about this, and he would say, "This is a very difficult word. You will not understand." I said, "It doesn't matter. What does it mean?" And then he would unfold part of Rumi's poetry for me. And I used to just close my eyes and really enjoy it. And if somebody asked me the word, I couldn't repeat it. It was a difficult word for me. I was like only, I don't know, 7 and 8. But I
That's
was,
when you started reading Rumi poetry?
yes,
Oh my
yes.
God.
Yes, but in
Wow.
a very gentle way. It wasn't like I went to a class and, I never learned anything formally. In fact, nothing I do or teach, I've ever had a formal training for it. And I say
Mm.
that to anybody that hires me and pays me so that they know, because if they're looking for qualifications, I have none. But if they're looking for curiosity and almost a lifetime of exploration, I have plenty.
Hmm. So the invisible world that you
Invisible.
speak of, what I'm thinking of is this the energy of love. Is my interpretation, does it match with what you're describing as the invisible world? Because I have very little experience with Rumi's poetry, but the experience that I do have with it has been this very profound presence of love. So when you're referring to this invisible world, are you referring to that?
Well,
Your
invisible
connection to.
world and visible world was made out of love. There
Hmm.
is no other. Everything else is part of that. Even what we call, let's say, hate, really the opposite of love is fear, not hate. The opposite of love is fear. And fear is not even opposite of love, is love gone haywire. It's love gone wrong.
Hmm.
So just think about that. If I say strongly, I hate you, okay, that that energy is really indication of my yearning for wanting to love you. I feel it's not there, so I say I hate you. So
It's
everything
the
is
absence of the love that,
exactly.
and our heart,
Yes.
our heart yearns
Yes.
for the
And if I
experience of
really
love.
didn't want it, if love didn't matter, so I wouldn't care. So so you say, do you love me? I say no, and I'll be fine. But when I say I hate you, there that means there's a yearning that wasn't fulfilled. You
Mm,
know, there is energy there.
mm,
And that energy is the fact that I know, we all know that we were made out of love. And now we're not in that state of love and we're missing it and we know we're missing it. That's why
mm,
we're upset.
That's a really interesting perspective, and it resonates. It
Mm,
resonates very much. Yeah. We
yeah,
can't help but to blame the other person for the absence of that love that we're experiencing.
exactly.
Depending on the situation, it can hurt so much. So we'll project that, we'll hate the other person.
Yes.
But
What I'm really saying is I am not
I,
in a state of love.
yeah, yeah. And I'm yearning
I'm
for love.
yearning to be because that's my natural disposition. We are far from it's almost like this hot and warm kind of game that we used to play. So when I'm very far from where I want to be, where I am, where what I'm made of, then I have strong emotions. I hate, I argue, I shout, I scream, I fight. But what I don't know is that only is indication of the fact that I, Mitra, am far from my original essence, what I'm made of.
Hmm.
That's why I'm upset. And that's why when the most difficult things happen, but we are able to stay in our state of love, we feel satisfied. I have lost the argument. I've lost the case. I've lost something, but I've stayed in the state of love. I still feel like a winner because the true winning is going to our own original organic state of being, which is love. And love as a state, not love as an emotion. I'm not speaking about, oh, I love this. I'm speaking about love as a state, as the main energy that runs through my veins.
Mm. And Rumi's poetry help you
Oh,
connect with that
yes.
knowing.
Yes. Rumi's poetry reminds me, and it's almost like it's like cream for my soul. It's a cake that my soul eats. And I don't know, maybe, and there are, by the way, other poems that do the same. The other, and you have to remember, no poet can write poetry without being a philosopher. So when we say poets and poetry, is really indication of a philosophy. It's a ism on its own. Every poet, every poetry. So I read other poems too, but I think my connection with Rumi is so deep that it calls a different part of me. But I've also read many other poetry that, Hafez poetry is also amazing and speaks to me. And there are many other poets, American poets, also. Emily Dickinson, actually, I read Dickinson and I connect to her poetry very much. But there are different levels of me that connect to this poetry, as it is for everybody, I'm sure. Rumi was my first love. And I think that's the dedication and the connection I have.
Yeah, I really feel that. I really feel that when I hear you talking about it. Okay, so for someone who is interested in exploring Rumi poetry, because you've done, I mean, the way you've talked about it has made it so appealing and interesting. So just reading the translation doesn't suffice, right? So let's just clarify this. What is the right way to read and study Rumi poetry?
There are no right way. There is your way and my way. And I think, sometimes the translation also speak. It's just like me reading English. English is not my first language, but I still connect to it. So I think just pick up whatever language you connect to, pick up and read it and see how you feel more than what you think. So go drop into your heart. And then there are many ways and there are many translations and there are many classes. But I think the main thing is to just start and see if it speaks to you. And it doesn't need to be Rumi. I don't want to be like, sounding like this is the only way to salvation. There are many other poetries that speak deeply, or text or writings. I feel the same way when I read Nietzsche's writing. Nietzsche really speaks to me. And or old Zoroastrian texts. If you read the philosophy of Zoroastrianism, which all came from Mitraism before all these religions were born, you feel the same way. It's like essence of things. So pick up any book of poetry that you relate to. If you want, read Rumi and see how you feel more than what you think. And if you say, what does it mean? Ask yourself that question. Ask, what does it mean to me? And whatever that means to you. So when Rumi talks about love, okay, when I'm a kid and I'm in love with the next door neighbor, okay, that speaks about like that person that I'm in love with. And then I get older, maybe I'm in a state of parenthood, then love is love for my children. Then you go beyond that and you say love for humanity. Then you realize that, oh, love as a state of being, I am made out of love. All of these states or experiences are all good. There's no wrong or right. It just depends on where I'm at in life in that moment. So I connect with those words in a different way. Is it romantic love? Is it parental love? Is it love for humanity? Is it love for everything, what I'm made of? But the main thing is to get curious about it and understand even that you need to go walk on that road of learning and going deeper in a more neutral way, and no, not right and wrong, because that's the fear language.
This is a perfect segue. We'll close with a Rumi quote. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there.
Thank you. And for listeners, we did not arrange this. I said that and you just read that. We didn't organize these things. We do not arrange what we're going to talk about. So, yes, thank you. That's a perfect one. Yes.
Until next time, Mitra.
See you then.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.